Good morning, shoppers. Welcome to an interesting conversation. We'll see how many people try and ring me today. I'll make the phone quiet. I forgot to get something to lean on. I have to lean on my coffee cup. Cheers. Saturday morning, 22nd of March. And thank you for all the birthday wishes. It was actually my birthday yesterday. Looking good for 52, apparently. Not. It's a tough world these days. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to do. So many obligations. So little accountability. So I've fashioned myself into a bit of an accountability machine these last few years. And it's quite interesting. So if you're new, I'm Andrew Thaler. I'm a councillor on our local council, Snowy Monero Regional Council. And morning, Jim Bob Zephyr. How are you, mate? So we had elections last year, September 2024. We had council elections. I'd previously run in 2 elections for the local council. It's been pretty toxic. This area can be toxic. And for too long, it's been overshadowed by the National Party and the Labor Party, and they seem to have formed a coalition of working together. They're normally mortal enemies. One sort of used to stand for farmers and more right-wing alignment, freedom, small government, and resources and opportunity for all. And Labor is just a communist, socialist, thought control, mind control apparatus where all the power goes to those in the top echelon and they live the life while all the peasants work to pay tax. I'll repeat that. Whilst all the peasants work to pay tax. Labor is the party of taxes, and the National Party are in bed with them now in a bit of a coalition. So the general names that you need to remember at the moment is Nicole Overall, who's been out on a bit of a PR relations campaign. She thinks she's actually... Have you ever heard of freedom of speech, mate? Oh, yeah, I've heard of it, and I'm enforcing it and upholding it and bringing it back to the people. So people come to our council meetings, just to jump aside, people come to our council meetings and they speak at open forum, and we assist them to do that behind the scenes. And we saw that just on Thursday this week when Matt Badrock came and spoke. And he spoke well and clear and direct about his 3-year-long battle to get asbestos cleaned up from his neighbouring property. And that asbestos and shit is now washing onto his property because there's a landfill being built next to him. Or if you wrote your own book, what would you call your own book? I got lots of working titles in my head. What would I call my own book? We'll have to wait. The problem is it's too much for one book. So I got a pretty big story. I've done a lot in my 52 years. I've fought government. I've been to court. So I'll touch on a bunch of these things. I really want to focus on Rocky Harvey, though. Rocky Harvey is a fellow from Jindabyne with this... he's self-infatuated, I suppose, would be the polite way to describe him. He's got this crazy curly mustache that I can only imagine looks ghastly when he comes out of the shower. He's got this mustache that curls up like this, almost up to his eyes, and he's pretty proud of it. But you can imagine when you get out of the shower, it'd just be like 2 slugs hanging down. I reckon it would look pretty terrible. But hey, not my problem. He's the one that has to live with it. Could you imagine you got this mustache, and of course you're sleeping at night, and so one's going to be like that and one's going to be sticking out. Like, what does a mustache after a night in a pillow look like? Or does he have a special pillow that props him up either side, like 2 balls under his chin to stop him from rolling on his pillow? Oh, I could be so cruel in my imagination. But I can also be direct and blunt. And let's talk about the Rocky Harvey story, because there's a message held for if you started your own YouTube channel, what would it be about? Well, Jenny, I did start my own YouTube channel, and here you are on it. Welcome and thank you. And it's about all kinds of things: politics, observations, freedom fighting, and the like. So, who is Rocky Harvey? He's from the Jindabyne Crackenback Way in southern New South Wales, sort of near the Snowy Mountains. He apparently makes sausages. Maybe he's a butcher or something. It's hard to tell. But he makes sausages, but problem is they don't last very long. That's what he says in his advertising. He sells his sausages, but he says they won't last very long. I don't know why you would buy a sausage that doesn't last very long. Anyway, horses for courses. Hey, Rocky. He was supposed to be a builder, Chapman Constructions. Doesn't seem to be much activity. And I've heard reports that people have rung up the Chapman Constructions contact details, and it goes into Canberra, and the bloke who answers basically almost blows up at the name Rocky Harvey. Rocky's not been involved for a long time. Brother-in-law or something, can't quite work out the relationship. So feel free to do more research in that regard. Rocky has done some building work, and it doesn't take long, it didn't take me long to find out some of the stories about that building work, full of defects, court actions, problems, and a recommendation to never ever let him swing a hammer at your property. And what do you think of Donald Trump and Tommy Robertson? We're talking about Rocky Harvey, so let's keep to the topics. So Rocky Harvey likes horses, and apparently he's got a horse named Jesus. So I suppose it's a reasonable name. I don't know how the horse feels about that, but the man with a horse named Jesus. And he goes for a ride up in the national park on his own. I don't know if that doesn't mean he doesn't have any friends, but he rides on his own, which is quite bizarre. In the Snowy Mountains, we've had massive drama with our socialist, communist, Labor state government killing all of the brumbies. We have wild brumbies, and they roam free in a national park that's nearly the size of a European country. It's an enormous place. It's an alpine environment or subalpine environment mixed, and there's lots of horses up there. The government said there was 21,000. We reckon there's less than 3,000. Nobody believes the count. And the government, when the Labor government took power and got the majority, they said, we're going to shoot them all from the helicopters. We're going to kill all the horses. And that's what they started doing. They started shooting them from the ground in various places. Snowy Plain, I think there was some 80-odd horses shot and just left on the ground to rot. And Rocky Harvey used to go and camp out there, and he was disgusted. And so he cut the head off a dead horse, and he put it in a sack. And he went to Jindabyne, to the there's a National Parks and Wildlife Service. That's our wildlife government people. So they have a little office in Jindabyne in an interesting building. There's a bit of a foyer museum kind of entrance and a cafe. And so Rocky Harvey cut the head off a rotting dead horse, drove to Jindabyne, walked into the foyer, videoing himself with his phone, and dumped the head in the foyer and said, I'm just returning your belongings, something to that effect. And I initially thought that was pretty brave, and I would have supported him, and I reached out to help him because he got charged. He was charged with offensive conduct. And see, the problem with that is you got to look at the references in The Godfather, the movie The Godfather. That's a pretty tough psychological impact to people that aren't expecting it, aren't involved in it. The waitresses and waiters, the young kids that work in the cafe, guests of Jindabyne who've come to the Snowy Mountains to stop and have a coffee and pick up some information from the information kiosk and have a look at some of the historical pictures of what Jindabyne is. It's the centre of the Snowy Mountains scheme, big hydroelectric system. It's world renowned, very popular. And some bloke with a weird mustache, short, angry man, walks in and dumps a horse's head on the floor of the museum just at the cafeteria there, the cafe. Wasn't a good idea, really. Anyway, so he was charged. He was the hero for the minute because the video went pretty wild and the newspapers picked it up. And everyone thought, yeah, this guy's great. We're gonna get him, help us with our cause and highlight the issue. What it actually did was made the government double down, made the lefties in the Labor Party double down, like the peasants are revolting type of thing. So they fired up and fueled up the helicopters and they started shooting the shit out of everything. Doesn't matter if it was a goat, fox, a deer. They said that they were shooting, and there was lots. I was up there. I camped up there a couple of times in the mountains. We saw the choppers. We heard the shooting. We went looking in some of the areas where the shooting was observed to occur. Found nothing. One of my friends found periodically in different locations dead horses, and they had lots of bullet holes in them. And the argument was that shooting horses from a helicopter and shooting horses running is wrong. You cannot apply a lethal shot. And that we found out through the preliminary inquiry and a report from the RSPCA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, when they looked at that first shooting campaign, that there were up to 17 bullets in some horses. And there was something in the order of 2,600 bullets used to shoot 320 horses. I haven't thought about those numbers for about 18 months. I was heavily involved in the campaign to protect the Brumbies and get to the truth. And I did a lot of videos, and Rocky started featuring them in the background in the comments very negatively. Very negatively. Didn't like me. I did meet him once up in the mountains and he wanted to have a fight. And he got upset that I patted his horse. I put my hand out and his horse walked to me and I gave his horse a pat and he got the shits with that. So maybe I've got a better connection with Jesus than you do, Rocky. Anyway. So he went to court, this short, angry man with the weird mustache. He went to court and he defended himself. And there is a statement that anyone that represents themselves in a modern court has a fool for a client. And I don't use that too often because I generally represent myself. But I got a pretty good track record. I have a lot of wins. So Rocky represented himself, and I sat in the gallery and I watched. And some of the evidence that was run in court was material that I produced, videos that I produced, which I thought was quite interesting. And I watched the magistrate with an interesting kind of side smile. He knew what was going on, the magistrate. Old Roger Clisdell. He's not a bad old stick. He's a pretty fair magistrate. I've had a few tangles with him, but overall, he's not a bad old stick. So Rocky made a bit of a mess of his case. I sat there and wrote pages and pages and pages of notes and some great quotes. And there was one stage where we had to watch a video. It was a bit boring. So I did a court sketch of Rocky at the bar table, and I posted that out. He was a bit upset, but that's what you do. You're not allowed to take photos, but you're allowed to do drawings. So I was a digital media. I am my own digital media, so I'm entitled to be there. I was mentioned, and so I faithfully took notes. And then after the case, after Rocky was found guilty and given a discretionary dismissal, so he was let off without punishment, he tried to big note himself. I just told the story. I told everybody through my channels because most people couldn't go to the court. And so Rocky hated me even harder. And Rocky's friends, you got to look at who the friends are. He's friends with Bronnie Thaler. He likes to name drop Bronnie Thaler whenever he can. She's a former state parliamentarian. She is a big, fat liar. Big, fat, liar. And then there's Nicole Overall, who was our former MP for the state seat of Monaro. And I ran against her in the last state election 2 years ago. And she lost because she's a bitch. She's nasty. She's venal. She's one of the most narcissistic, thin-skinned, venal women you would ever meet. And I got lots of funny stories about her to share because she's coming out for me at the moment. She's coming hard. And she's in communication with Rocky Harvey. Just suddenly heard someone talking about it's a PA system from an event down the road in our little village. We've got an event on today. So Nicole Overall's coming out hard at me at the moment, and she's in cahoots with Rocky, and so is Bronny. And they like to mention and name drop Peter Cochrane. Peter Cochrane does horse tricks in the national park. He is just awful. He's got a poor reputation. He thinks he's a much bigger man than he is. He's quite well known for being completely unfaithful to his wife. Second wife, third wife, I lost count. He paid a bribe to the National Party to get a special legislation in to keep the horses in the national park. And he magically then got access to run a private business of horse trekking in a national park. So, you know how the National Party works. They like to lubricate each other's hand. So I've been at war with these nasty people. No, it's not a coincidence that Peter Cochrane was a state parliamentarian 20-odd years ago, and he was in our local council. And I first moved to this area 19 years ago, and I came across this Peter Cochrane, and I watched him in council, and I had a few dealings with him, and he was just a lying piece of shit. National Party through and through. It's what they do. So I've got a lot of information on these people over the years. And so Rocky's just the latest incantation of a wannabe National Party hero. Going to save the community. Does nothing. Big mouth, short legs. Big mouth, short arms. Can't reach the bottom of his pocket to pick up some coins. So Rocky, being the short-term hero of the month, he started a fundraiser with GoFundMe. And what's interesting is that he didn't need to do that. There was already plans in motion with other people, a whole bunch of not-for-profit registered horse groups. But Rocky dived in and said, I'll put in a lot of money. I'm going to put in a big donation and I'll run a GoFundMe and we're going to raise a lot of money. And we're going to do an aerial survey of the national park and we're going to count the horses. We're going to count them using artificial intelligence. And we thought, that's interesting. Okay. So I offered $5,000 donation commitment, and I challenged Peter Cochrane to match me, and Nicole Overall, and Bronny Thaler. Bronny Thaler's worth tens of millions of dollars. It's her brother-in-law that did the water scams with Barnaby Joyce, the $80 million of stormwater catchment entitlement that was sold back to the government for $80 million, and that money went to the Cayman Islands. It's that family. That's the Thaler family. Bronny Thaler's married to Duncan. Duncan's brother is Angus. Angus sold the water to Barnaby Joyce. Barnaby Joyce was the leader of the National Party. Time for a coffee sip. Excuse me. So we know how this shit works. So I offered a $5,000 donation. Rocky wouldn't take it, didn't want it, wouldn't give me the details. And Rocky boasted that he was raising the funds through the GoFundMe platform and all funds received would be audited and all the financials published. So everyone could see all the invoices and receipts and expense, everything would be published. It's called a lay down misere. And he never did. Not one person that I know of, and I know a lot of people, has ever seen any accounting from Rocky Harvey. And he shredded the reputation of a local real estate agent who I was formerly friends with, a really good bloke, Nick Kirshner. He said, we're going to put all the funds through Nick Kirshner's trust account. He's a stock and station agent, does real estate. He has to have a registered trust account. and it's audited quarterly, things like that. So a lot of people gathered some comfort from that it would be done right. And of course, it started off that the beneficiary of the fundraiser was Nick Kirshner's trust account. And then Rocky changed it when I challenged him. And I challenged Nick Kirshner to say, well, show us the truth of what's going on. And when that boast was made by Rocky, I rang Nick Kirshner because he's a mate. And I said, what's happening? Are you sure you're getting involved with the right person here? This guy's a bit of a dickhead. And Nick said to me, oh, Rocky's a great bloke. You should be friends with him. He's a solid guy. I said, okay, well, so what's happening with your GoFundMe? And he says, oh, actually, I don't know. I haven't heard from him for months. I said we could probably do something months ago, but I'd need to check with my accountant. And I said to Nick, and I spoke to Nick's, someone involved with Nick about it. I said, you need to be a registered not-for-profit. Otherwise, you could be subject to income tax. And you better get some legal advice or accounting advice as to what you're getting involved in. This is not like a property sale. It's a totally different thing. And they did get some advice. I don't think they liked it. I was right. And then Nick's name vanished off the GoFundMe and it was all Rocky Harvey after that. Now, Rocky Harvey claimed to be working with another woman called Claire Galea, who's a biostatistician. And she was then pulled away from all the people that she had been working on for years. Claire came to prominence in our area by doing an analysis of the kangaroo shooting processes and the counting for kangaroos. And she found statistical anomalies in the process called the CANS, CAIRNS, CANS methodology. And it was found to be entirely mathematically deficient. And what was interesting is when the Labor government was in power in the New South Wales, that's what they used to count the horses. But when the Labor government was in opposition, they used Claire Galea to prove the kangaroo survey CANS counting methodology was flawed, and they attacked it. So interesting how these people change their spots depending on which side of the bench they get to sit. Because they wanted to shoot the horses, they knew they wouldn't be able to do it through normal proper means, so they went, oh, the CANS methodology massively inflates numbers by a factor of 10 at least. So they embraced the CANS methodology, put CANS on a pedestal after having attacked him for years, Stuart CANS, Dr. Stuart CANS, he's an actual person, put him on a pedestal and then used his methodology to say, oh, there's somewhere between 14,000 and 21,700 horses. It's a big margin of error. That's like a whole 50% margin of error. So we have to shoot the horses to get the population down. They're decimating the park. We said, okay, show us some evidence. So they showed us creeks being stirred up and made muddy. And then people say, yeah, that was a four-wheel drive that got stuck and it had to be recovered. And that's what made all that mud. Oh, no, it was horses. Like, well, horses don't make parallel tracks. So that was the kind of stupidity we had to battle with. And in the background, we had a battle with Rocky. Rocky started telling bigger and bigger lies. At the very beginning, when there was a general commitment and a promise that funds would be audited and the right things would be done, we raised about $85,000 in a bit over a month. That was a significant effort for this community. I contacted Rocky. I did speak to him once, and I said, you're doing an AI horse count. Can I assist? I've got a $5,000 donation I'm ready to put in. What do you need to support your AI count? What sort of compute do you need? He had no idea what I was talking about. See, I designed a version of a data center for Bitcoin mining. And we put our computers in oil. We submerged them in tanks of oil, and we then cooled the oil to cool the computers. And in so doing, we could increase the processing rate of those computers by up to 30 or 50%. So for every $1 of computer that we purchased, we were able to use $1.50 equivalents worth of computer by turning up the clock speed, the processing power, and then turning up the cooling or the rate of cooling, which you can't do with air. There's a certain saturation point with air cooling that you reach, but with forced oil cooling, you can really drive the cooling, and it allowed us to get we proved up to 80% increase or overclocking but we did start killing chips. So I designed a lot of that, built prototype, started a business in that event. And we realized that it wasn't just Bitcoin mining. We could also do AI processing. And there's a whole sub-level wormhole conversation in that regard. You can do image rendering and processing, image interrogation. You can do word, optical recognition, camera optical recognition, and machine learning. And you have to just run the program again and again and again through tens of thousands of loops. As the machine learns each loop, it gets better. Massive processing, and we were able to do that with these computers at a higher speed. And there was another side branch to that, which we became an energy management control tool. So when the electricity was cheap, we would use more power, and when electricity was expensive, we would turn the speed down, and we'd go to 30% processing power. So at night, we could go down to 30% processing power or 0% processing power at peak times. And in the middle of the day and at the middle of the night, when the electricity was the cheapest, we could go to 150% processing power. So I knew some of the top AI people in Australia. I still do. And I'd rung my AI friends in the Machine Learning Institute in South Australia and asked, you ever heard of this project, this horse counting project? And I found out the details that the company Rocky was using was called Airborne Logic. And they had only been doing studies on grapevines, counting grapes on vines and trying to understand grape density in vineyards or rows of vines. They didn't have the capacity to count horses in a national park. Rocky basically told me to fuck off. Wasn't interested. Didn't know what I was talking about. He wasn't interested. So I gathered a bunch of people together and we started building our own system to do an AI count with an aerial survey. Because Rocky also boasted that the aerial survey, being publicly funded, would be available to everybody. The raw data would be available. And we said, right, we will be a peer review. We will take your aerial imagery and we'll plug it through our system, and we'll be a peer review, because our system had already been used to count rabbits and turtles and starfish and what have you. And so a lady called Rachel is now a friend of mine. She provided the system and we started training it. I took videos and photos of my horses. I have 7 Brumbies and I had some regular domestics at the time. And so we took photos from all different angles and aerial, above, drone imagery. We used drone imagery on Rachel's horses. She's got 23 or 30 horses or something. And we started training our program, so we were ready. Rocky did the flying over the national park in secret. No one knows when it was done. He started processing the imagery in secret. And then he put up an image montage and said, oh, can you help me start counting the horses? Can people start clicking around the image, like searching around Google Earth, and can you click on the horses? So people started doing that. And it was apparent then to me, Rocky didn't have a machine learning program to count horses. He had human beings for free who'd already donated their money counting the horses. And it was the people counting and marking the horses that he then got the computer system to understand. So his AI horse counting thing was always bullshit. He built it after the fact, and I proved you can build it before the fact, because our one worked before we would start counting the horses. Rocky's worked after people counted the horses. He's a nasty little man. Now, another curious thing happened. He raised 85,000 and he was short, and he could only survey a small area of the park. So he started another GoFundMe and started trying to raise money. And I was calling him out by this stage. I was exposing him, his nasty comments. He started putting derogatory and nasty comments about me in his commentary, in his GoFundMe, whatever. And he was going to do another count because it was going to be statistically anomalous, irrelevant. It was too small an area. And he was very nasty. I bumped into him one day up at Ware's Yards, up in the national park, one of the horse camping areas in the park, and he wanted to fight me. I padded his horse and he cracked the shits. That video's on YouTube. If you're interested, you can go and have a look. He's a very angry man, and he started making more and more outrageous and outlandish comments. And so I ran in the council election by that stage, And he was very negative against me. He didn't run against me, though, did he? That's the thing. He didn't run against me. He had a big mouth, short legs, had opportunity to run and nominate, and he didn't. So he could have had a seat at the table. If you had the support you claim, Rocky, could have been on the council table with me. But you're not. So Rocky then got the shits when I got elected to be a councillor. And he turns up to the council meetings and he sort of makes sure that a couple of people see him there, and then he runs away, he nicks off. And he goes, oh, yeah, I went to the meeting. Yeah, what, for 5 minutes? You haven't got much heart, Rocky. You can't hang around. You can't stay. So he's really going to town now. He created a little page, little Facebook page. There's hardly anyone on it. He puts up these sort of crazy comments about holding the council to account, and the Councillor Thaler says the most outrageous things. Yeah, maybe I do. I say the things that need to be said, and if that's outrageous, it's because we've lost sight of what's actually going on. I say things about council dumping asbestos and leaving it laying around the community, refusing to clean it up. That's outrageous. And it is outrageous. And we're going to force it to be cleaned up. That's what I do. I bring accountability. So Rocky's friend Nicole Overall, a parliamentarian, she got back into the parliament. She couldn't get elected, so she got parachuted in. Somebody resigned, and so she got parachuted in. She wasn't in there a couple of days before she started attacking me, because she's really bitter that she lost. That's okay. So she's in Parliament. She's lying about me. She's breaching confidentialities of legal process. She's on the radio show, which is broadcast nationally across Australia every day. She's on that, shit talking me. She's announced my federal election campaign. She's just a goldmine for laughs, basically, this venal woman. And Rocky's there cheering along from the side. But what's interesting is Rocky's got a few things that he forgot to admit up and own up to. See, when Rocky had this money and he claimed to have spent it on the horse counting and the AI and whatever else, he's never ever offered any proof of that. I know who reported him to the Department of Fair Trading for illegally raising money without an approval, because you need to be a tax exempt if you're doing it for a public purpose. You need to have a tax exemption certificate, and he didn't do that. So technically, Rocky raised money which would be treated as an income, and 85,000 would put him in a higher tax bracket, and he would lose a whole bunch in tax. And he didn't do any of that. So he was investigated by the Department of Fair Trading, and he thinks I reported him. He blames me, but it wasn't me. I know who it was, and I'm not going to reveal that. And he was found to have broken the law again. So he's cut a head off a horse and dumped it in and traumatised people, dumped it in a museum cafe and traumatised people, found guilty. And then he's broken the law, raising money. No accountability, not showed anybody. He comes out of this investigation phase and says, everything's fine. They reckon it's fine. They gave me a warning, and it's all Thaler's fault. Okay. Show us the proof of that, mate. Show us the proof of that you got let off with a warning. What? Maybe you got a fine. Maybe you got a tax bill you don't want to tell anyone. Maybe you're suffering some financial pain at the moment, and I'll get to that in a sec. This is the relevant point. You see, he raised all this money, and then magically in the middle of that, while we're waiting for proof of how it was spent, he buys a cafe in Jindabyne. And he bought it off people who are my friends. So I know a fair bit about the situation. That's got to be a year and a half ago or more now. So he bought the cafe business, and separately he bought the stock of the business. And they agreed to a value of $30,000 for the stock. The people who he bought the cafe off loaned Rocky the money. It's called a vendor finance arrangement. They loaned Rocky the money to buy their stock. You don't get any more generous than that. But Scott and Sherry had enough. They were targeted through the COVID period. They were being ostracised because they were treated terribly by the government, which is why I came to know them and I helped them. Excuse me. That's a whole separate story in itself. And they were trying to sell their business to get out. They just wanted to get out, go back to Queensland where they had family and start again, start afresh. So Rocky bought their business at a significant discount to what they were hoping to get. So they looked after him in that way. He made a low offer and they couldn't get any other offers, so they had to accept. And they sold the stock at basically cost price. Rocky didn't have the money, so they did a vendor finance agreement and a contract. And Rocky made 2 payments against the vendor finance arrangement, the VFA, and he stopped paying. And he hasn't paid them for over a year. Why is that? Is it because he got a big fine or a big tax bill from his fundraising? See, Rocky doesn't own up to anything. He's not an open book like I am. I'm an open book. Rocky isn't. Secrets upon secrets upon secrets. And so I call on you, Rocky. Explain to the community why you are hurting a young family who've only recently had their second child. They left our area. They're trying to start again in Queensland. You got their business very cheap. You got their stock at cost. And then you refused to pay for it after you made 2 payments. I think I should start a GoFundMe for Scott and Sherry to commence legal action against Rocky, because the vendor financing arrangement is secured with a mortgage over Rocky's property. I've encouraged Scott and Sherry to get a lawyer involved and just get this settled. It's time to pay up, Rocky. And it's time to shut that stupid mouth of yours around our community with all your shit talking and your shit posting. You're not the community's conscience. You're not an honest man. You're not a nice man. See, another thing Rocky did is he actually banned me. He wrote a letter to me. It was full of spelling mistakes. It's legally ridiculous. He wrote a letter to me banning me from his cafe. Okay. Do I give a shit? I don't go there. I don't live there. But in banning me, Rocky, you banned all my friends. Because my friends won't go there either now. So that's how it works, mate. I got a bigger audience than you. I know more people than you. I'm in the community a lot more than you. And I tell everybody, don't go to Rocky's Cafe. I wonder if you're suffering. Is trade down? Are you struggling to keep staff? Are you behind on your payments to your staff? Certainly the business has shrunk from what you purchased. It's not even half as big as it was. And you haven't paid for the stock you bought. Do you see how it works, Rocky? Be careful of what you do and say. If you don't think far forwards, if you don't strategize and plan carefully, you will come undone. And somebody like me will tell the story again and again, and upon request. No paper. No paper. All from memory, Rocky. All from memory. And I've been kind. I haven't told everything, have I? And you know that, Rocky. I haven't told everything out of some limited measure of respect or decency. Just be careful who you pick a fight with, mate. Because you picked a fight you'll never win. So that's what we know of the story of Rocky Harvey, the short man with a ridiculous mustache and an ego that you couldn't measure. Your move, Rocky. How about you pick up the phone to Scott and Sherry, apologise, hand over the 30 grand plus interest, year and a half interest at circa 10%. What are you up to? You made 2 payments, 35 grand. Pay your bills, Rocky, and I'll tell the world that you paid. It's pretty simple. I also made Rocky many offers over the timeline. Mate, just put the swords down. We've got a common problem. It's the state government, the Labor government. But Rocky's now in bed with the Labor government, the Labor councillors, the people that shot his bloody Brumbies. He's in bed with them because they hate me and he hates me. They are united through hate. It's the funniest thing. It really is. So we call it the Monero Zone. This is the Monero Zone. It is sad that there are so many cruel people in the world. Rocky's not a horse whisperer. He's a horse torturer. Lucky the horse was dead when he cut its head off. But there are so many assholes in this world. So little time. But I've had a lot of people over the weeks, say, who the hell is Rocky Harvey? Well, there's your story. So feel free to share this around. And if you're interested, Rocky, if you want to take me down for defamation, I invite you to try. It'll be hilarious. PO Box 16, Jindabyne, New South Wales, military postcode 2631. That's where you can send your legal letters to. Maybe you could borrow Nicole Overall's immigration lawyer. She got her immigration lawyer to start a defamation proceeding against me, which I laughed at, and I read the letter out publicly. It was terrible. These people have no idea. They say, oh, look, that bloke's missing his tooth. He's a bogan. He lives in Jindabyne. He's a nobody. The number of teeth is not a measure of your IQ. And they worked out the hard way because they've taken me to court so many times and I've beaten them every time. Nicole Overall stood in Parliament this week. That's the event downtown, motorbikes. Nicole Overall stood in Parliament this week and said, oh, Thaler has fronted court on many occasions. Yeah, no convictions, bitch. I made that clear, didn't I? No convictions, bitch. Quote. And that quote's been put in national media and broadcast around our country. It's pretty funny. I stand by it. There are no convictions. And I fronted court this week on Thursday morning, where the police applied for a protection order to protect me from a crazy, disgusting, psycho neighbour. And I got the protection order. It's called an AVO, an apprehended violence order. I've got that order to protect me and my family for 5 more years, having already had it in place for 4 years. So it's a warning to the trolls and the people that want to attack me and threaten my family, which Rocky certainly encourages. I fronted court again this week, and I walked out with a protection order. And I've fronted court many times in the last couple of years, and I've walked out innocent. No charges withdrawn or not guilty. Do not underestimate my knowledge or my commitment to the truth, to freedom, to openness, to transparency, to accountability, and to hold you lying bastards to account. I've lost millions of dollars over the years from the impact on my businesses, from all the lies and the false charges and the false reporting in the news. I'm coming at you. Hard, fast, centred, strong, and with support of the community. I'm on the council. You can't get me out of it. And you certainly can't do it by lying. I stand in truth, and I'm not finished by a long mile. I don't know anything about American banks being unable to do business in Canada. I would find that rather odd. Sorry, Eshan. There are so many sad and cruel people in the world, but we just have to keep true, keep strong, join together. We're stronger together. So best way to keep up to date with what's happening and to have some really good laughs along the way is with the Monero Zone. So you can find the Monero Zone on YouTube, on Facebook. Chris Chan is an outstanding journalist in our area in the digital age. He does songs, he does articles, interviews, he puts them on YouTube. He interviewed my wife this week. It was quite confronting for her. It was her first time ever doing something like that. And she stood in her truth and told her story, my story, our story. We've been married 19 years. We've got 5 kids. We fight for their future. We fight for your kids' future. We are stronger together. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your day, and ciao.